All right, Unit 1, PowerPoint 3. We're moving from the south into the middle colonies. Some things to keep in mind about the middle colonies, they're in the middle. So we're going to see aspects of both other regions of influence in the middle colonies. All right, they're going to be a little more diverse ethically and religiously. The settlers are going to come from England. They'll be Dutch. Remember, New York was a Dutch colony, and German. All right, and they'll come for a combination of reasons. There'll be both economic opportunity and religious freedom in the middle colonies, where in the south it's economic opportunity, and in New England it's religious freedom. We see that blend here. The region is referred to as the colonial breadbasket because of their focus on food production for consumption domestically or here, not cash crop production for overseas. Okay, we're also going to see a focus on trading and shipbuilding, which will lead to the development of cities, commercial centers like New York and Philadelphia. Okay, one of the middle colonies that I like to just draw a little special attention to is Pennsylvania. It's a proprietary colony, meaning William Penn owns it. Pennsylvania is Penn Woodlands. He was given Pennsylvania because the king owed his father a gambling debt. So a nice little bit of that. He founded it as a home for the Quakers, which is a religious denomination. They believe that every person has an inner light, and there's no real need for organized churches or ministers. They're also pacifists, which means they are nonviolent. They will not fight, which later on, as we get to the revolution, brings a little suspicion on them by their neighbors. All right, we like you to pick a side, or with us or against us. The Quakers like, we just don't fight with them. It does allow them to develop better relations with the Native Americans. Okay, society in the middle colonies, like I said, there's a little more religious diversity. We have Quakers in Pennsylvania. Remember that, Quakers in Pennsylvania. Maryland was a haven for Catholics. Okay, we have Huguenots and Jews in New York. Huguenots are French Calvinists. You should remember John Calvin from world history. And we'll discuss his ideas in class a little bit, especially predestination and his influence both on Puritans and others. New Jersey is a home for the Presbyterians. We see a lot more social mobility in the middle colonies. That means you can change your status. There's a lot more opportunity for growth, okay, and the development of a strong middle class in the middle colonies, okay. Partisans are skilled craftsmen, entrepreneurs, or business owners, people who start businesses. All right, so that they make up the strong middle class. We also see a blending of governmental systems, okay? And no specific one you need to know. We see, depending on the level and the location, a mixture of both representative and direct democracy. So again, the influence from both sides. All right, as we move further north, we get to Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay. We've discussed them briefly, all right? Plymouth is, of course, the first of the New England colonies. It will later on be absorbed in the Massachusetts Bay colony, and we'll just refer to them both as Massachusetts. Okay, the Pilgrims are a group of Puritans who come over. They found their colony for religious freedom, theirs, not anybody else's. They're not tolerant of others. We call the Pilgrims separatists because they are members of the Anglican Church who believe it hasn't gone far enough away from Catholicism, so they want to separate completely from it. Okay, they land at Plymouth in 1620. Not one of the specific dates you need to know, but I like us to have a timeline kind of in our mind as events occur. Their leader is William Bradford, so as the Mayflower, the ship they came over on, pulls up to Plymouth Rock. He says, hey, before everybody gets off, let's have a meeting of the important people, the men, all right, and we're going to come up with some rules and regulations for our colony. So they come up with the Mayflower Compact. Compact means agreement. And they all agree to follow the laws and rules established by the colony. Okay, so the Mayflower Compact then establishes and lays the groundwork for direct democracy in the New England colonies. Later, as more Puritans arrive, Plymouth will be absorbed in the Massachusetts Bay. Their leader is going to be John Winthrop, and they want to purify, well, the Church of England, make it better. The Church of England is the Anglican Church. Right. Winthrop wants to establish a city on the hill, a shining example for the world to look at, and this idea becomes a common theme in U.S. history. We'll see it referred to on and on and on, especially all the way up to the time of Ronald Reagan. The city on the hill is Boston. All right, so they establish a covenant community in Massachusetts, a covenant Community is a mixture of ideas, a blending of their religious beliefs and democracy. So there's no separation of church and state whatsoever in New England. You have to be a member of the church to participate in direct democracy. They're very intolerant of dissenters. Okay, they have their ideas, they're firm in their beliefs, and they will not tolerate anybody challenging those ideas. Okay, so if you're a dissenter, you're usually asked to go, roughly. Okay, you're forced to go. So the New England colonies then are made up of Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay, which become just Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. All right, and we'll see Rhode Island and Connecticut especially are formed by dissenters, people who are asked to leave the Massachusetts colony. The first one, of course, is Plymouth, like we said, and Plymouth and Massachusetts become Massachusetts. The soil in New England is very, very rotten. All right? The growing season is much shorter than the South. It's very wooded, it's very rugged, it's somewhat cold. This is going to affect the development of their economy. They can only practice small-scale subsistence farming, and it's growing enough for your family. They can't produce enough for sale. So because of the geography, they have to look at other ways to make a living. All right, so they're going to turn to shipbuilding, fishing, all right, they have plenty of lumber, all right, with all that wood, you have great rivers to drive the mills, so they turn on shipbuilding. Fishing, they turn to the seas, and eventually manufacturing, again, because all those rivers are great for producing power. Society in New England, we refer to cod and God, fishing and religion, all right, everything revolves around the two, since the economy is centered on fishing, and a man's place in society is determined by his place in the church's religious standing. The Puritans grew increasingly intolerant of dissenters who challenged their beliefs. There's a direct connection between government and religion. All right. Their strong religious beliefs led to the idea that everybody must be able to read the Bible, and in order for everybody to read the Bible, everybody has to be able to read. So we'll see the development of public schools in New England before anywhere else, and a strong focus on education throughout New England's history. Okay, every town with at least 50 families has to establish a public school. We'll see the first university, first college in the New World, or in the English colonies in New England, Harvard, in 1636. All right. Again, no separation of church and state. You had to be a church member to participate in town meetings. Town meetings is where all church members went and gathered to vote directly, direct democracy, or Athenian democracy, right? And you may see a picture on a test or something about what type of democracy was practiced here, and there'll be a picture of a church or a town hall. All right, we have to remember that's New England, right? And they practice direct democracy because of the poor soil. They live in towns. They live close together, so they're allowed to practice direct democracy. They're able to practice direct democracy because they live near each other. Okay, and we'll see that also when we get to the Revolution. Is one of the reasons a lot of the trouble starts in New England. Look at the Boston Massacre, Boston Tea Party, and it's because people live close together. We share ideas more often. We see each other more often, and we talk and harp on our grievances more often. Okay, so no separation of church and state, town meetings, direct Athenian Greek democracy. Now, not everybody sees things the Puritan way, and one of my favorites, and somebody will refer back to quite often in review, is Roger Williams. Roger Williams is going to be the founder of Rhode Island after he's asked to leave Massachusetts. Connecticut also will be founded by a dissenter, an important reason to talk about Connecticut. Roger Williams is a religious dissenter who preaches liberty of conscience, all right, freedom of thought, separation of church and state. Okay, so he founds Rhode Island on these ideas of freedom, of thinking, and separation of church and state. It's going to allow for him in Rhode Island to develop the idea of universal male suffrage. That means all men can vote. Suffrage is a word you want to remember. We'll talk about the women's suffrage movement quite often during class, how it leads to male suffrage. Okay, so women's suffrage is the right to vote. Suffrage is the right to vote. We'll talk about that also with franchise. Franchise is another term we use for voting. Okay, so Williams ideas led Rhode Island to become a haven for dissenters. For example, Anne Hutchinson was a woman who preached and interpreted the Bible, which is bad news. It led to her being kicked out of Massachusetts also. She's chased out chiefly to Rhode Island. So it becomes a haven. As a matter of fact, one of the terms used to refer to Rhode Island is Rhode Island. Okay, we'll talk about that later on also in class more. Connecticut I bring up because of the fundamental orders, not because of the dissent. Connecticut, the fundamental orders of Connecticut are the first example of a written constitution in the colonies. And I may have said in the last lecture, and it's a theme I like to harp on throughout the course, a lot of progress that we make, a lot of on our way to get here to what we are today is through small steps. And the fundamental orders, this Constitution is one of the first small steps leading to Philadelphia, leading to our Constitution. By the time the founders go to Philadelphia and write a Constitution, all the states have a Constitution. So there's ideas for them to build on this, there's documents for them to look at and examples for them to use when they're thinking about what they're going to do and how they're going to create it. So 2 small steps right here in New England towards getting towards our Constitution and the big ideas that drive us today and integral parts of our belief system, the separation of church and state, the freedom of thought, all right, and written constitutions. I jump ahead just a little bit to talk about the Great Awakening. It's in the 1700s, but we jump from Unit 1, Colonies, right to the Revolution, and you can't get to the Revolution without the Great Awakening. It's, again, one of our baby steps. It's an early religious revival. It's led by really emotional fire and brimstone preachers like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield. And these guys they preach to crowds of thousands. And keep in mind, there's no entertainment back then. There's no TVs, there's no radio. So everybody comes to these huge revival meetings to get back to God. All right, it's characterized again by fire and brimstone sermons. It's very emotional, and it's going to lead to the growth of both the Baptist and Methodist denominations. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. You have to know probably Edwards, Whitefield, Baptist, and Methodist come out of the Great Awakening. All right. What's most important about the Great Awakening to me, in my idea, is it challenges traditional authority. All right. So it allows. It's one of our first steps where we speak out against those in charge. All right. So it's a stepping stone, a foundation for us leading to the revolution, leading to the big challenge on authority. All right. So the Great Awakening is one of our first steps towards independence. All right. That idea that we can question those in charge, challenge those in charge, and do things differently. Okay. So you want to remember that. All right. That's the end of Unit 1, Lecture 3.